Alright guys, today's job is 2018 Malibu. Both knuckles. The passenger side knuckle is making noise. Some months back, the noise was coming from the rear shocks. It fixed the problem up until now. Like I said, it was about 6 months ago. Started by getting noise there, and I know the shocks were brand new. And the culprit for these things are these knuckles. Those bushings go bad, which causes that noise, that knock or clunking sound you hear. I mean, you can ride over a smooth surface and you can still hear it. It's very audible. So it's time to get some tools out and swap both of these boys out. I'm gonna show you guys in extreme detail how to do it. But we'll do one side and I'll do the other side off camera. All right, guys, the sun is angling where I want it to be angling at. On the side where we need the most light is about 88 degrees. It's super hot, so I'm gonna be sweating, guys. I'm gonna be baking, but we're gonna knock this out. Let me show you where I'm jacking up at. Where I'm leaving the jack stands at. So this is where I'm jacking up at. Just to raise it high enough to put the jack stand right there. And I got one on each side. Since I'm gonna take both wheels off, I'm gonna do this side first. Let's raise it down. I'll show you guys exactly where it's gonna be. Let me raise it down right now while we under here. I think we're secure now. We up high enough. So let's zip this wheel off. I'll just snug the jack up here for just extra safety. Tighten it up. And that's not in our way, so we're fine with that. We're gonna need another small jack, or we can use this one to raise and lower the wheel as we remove that knuckle. So we're gonna do this really quickly. I've done this quite a few times. And show you guys how we're gonna do it super fast, quickly, but professionally. So let's get the wheel removed and let's get started because I'm baking hot. My legs are burning up in the sun right now. 19mm lugs. I'll zip these things off really quick. Show you guys what jack placement is. I'm gonna place the jack. If you got a bottle jack, you can go in here, but we want a firm, solid base on the frame. That's perfect for us. The very first thing you want to do, grab some WD-40 or some PB Blaster, some kind of lubricant. Just gonna hit these joints. Hit these bolts. Wow. So, the person who called this says she went to some automotive shop where she's from. They charged her arm and leg to change the back brakes and rotors. One thing I noticed is they didn't put the bolt that holds the rotor to the hub. These bolts were holding the rotors on in place before the brakes were applied at the factory, so the rotors wouldn't fall off. And although it's not necessary, I put every single thing back in the correct way it was installed on the vehicle whenever I'm working on anything. So that's not there. So the rotor's gonna come off. We don't have to worry about that. It's not there. Most likely the bolt is gonna be in the rotor on your vehicle. And I believe it's a Torx T27 or T30, one or the other. Fairly easy to remove. I put some penetrant on this bolt, that bolt. Spray it inside here on the hub bearing bolt. Not that it doesn't matter. and the caliper bracket bolts. That's a caliper bracket bolt right there. The hub bearing is inside. So the caliper actually goes through the knuckle there. This is the caliper bracket bolt, and this is another one up here. And the lower control arm bolt. If I can get some out of here. The very second thing we're gonna do is let's get another jack. I'm using another jack under here. We're gonna take some weight off these springs because we're gonna shoot these two bolts off right now. Before we get started, I got the jack, but before we get started, let's put a block in front of the wheels. Although this is front wheel drive and it locks at the transmission, put a block or a chock right there. Safe. This is a giant block, it ain't going nowhere. So let's jack it up just till we touch the bottom of that control arm and get some tension on there just a little bit like this. Raise it a little bit, maybe a little bit more. Let's zip these guys off right now. There's many ways to go about removing this knuckle. This is the way I've done it many times. Let's get these two top bolts off. They're 13/16. We're gonna need a wrench and a socket, and I'll show you why I'm doing it. Before we touching the caliper or anything, let's go. (13/16) socket, 13/16 boxed in wrench. Next thing we're gonna do, 10mm speed sensor. Let's take this out right now. So next thing we're gonna do, let's lower it. Okay guys, so the very next thing we're gonna do now is disconnect the trailing arm. This is the trailing arm. Let's remove the trailing arm bolts. They're 13/16. I'm gonna move them fairly easy. I'm gonna move them upright like I am right now. So let me mount the camera so you guys can see how I'm gonna do this. By the way, there's one bolt there. They're easy to get from underneath the vehicle. Very easy to get from underneath the vehicle, but hey, I'm not getting on the vehicle right now. I'm doing it like this so you guys can see me in action. I'll be using this 900. This thing's a beast with a swivel 13/16 socket. Let's pull this back some. Now both bolts are right in our face. Removing these two bolts allowed us to have room in here to remove the caliper bracket bolts with ease, and these trailing arm bolts, because if you look at the lower bolt, the control arm is in your way. It's tough to get a socket on it. You have to get a wrench to remove it, and we're trying to do this quickly. So now we're in position to get both easy, because this trailing arm, it moves lateral on that bushing as well, so you're not damaging anything. It moves lateral, just like this lateral link. This is called a lateral link. Adjust link, trailing arm, lower control arm, and the knuckle. That's the system. So let's get on here and remove this. Okay guys, for reference, I left the screws in there. Of course, I've done many of these jobs, so I don't have a problem with this, but if you're just doing this job, look, I got the part sitting here just as it sits. So this is how it goes in. That's the bottom. It goes in this way. So just for reference, you don't have to put, these bolts are the same, so no matter where they go, but put them right here. We'll have it right here when we go back to install. as well as here. And that's why I done this like so. I just move them back so when we push the knuckle on there, we just take the bolt off and put it back just how it came off. So this is for someone who's not doing mechanic work on a regular, but are mechanically inclined, just to remember all the small things, because when you get down to these boats, they do vary. The hub bearing boats compared to the caliper bracket boats. So there's some variation there. Since this is a tutorial, this is how I do it. Try to make sure all the details are there for the inexperienced mechanic to do this job, and which is very easy. So now we can do what we want to do. Now we can remove the caliper bracket. We're not going to remove the brakes. We're just going to zip the caliper bracket off the two bolts and set the entire brake caliper and brakes up here. So we just reinstall it. We're not removing. We have to remove the caliper from the caliper bracket, just to simplify things. 18mm socket for to break the caliper bracket bolts. That's one. That's the other one. So let's do that right now, and then we'll drill them off. I'll use the impact for the top one, but the reason I'm doing it this way, the reason I leave the caliper bracket on also, is because this bottom bolt is a little difficult to get a socket on here and have space to ratchet it, because it's up so close to this shock in this control arm. You have too much space between this shock absorber and the bolt. So this allows you to have a ton of space and can get a ratchet on there. Look at all the space we got. Look at the distance. You can get a socket on in there and remove it and have some space to remove the bolt. And it goes there, goes here. These are the hub bolts. All right, now let's remove the entire caliper and the caliper bracket. Let's set it on top of this trailing arm. Okay, let's remove this lower control arm bolt, 13/16, 13/16. Let's go on the shade. I'm gonna show you how we're gonna do this really quickly. I'm not even gonna exaggerate it. I'm sweating bullets. It's baking outside. It's in the 90s. And that sun was beating my back over there, torturing my back. But we're in the garage to show you guys how to simply do this, so we can allow for a more easier install as well. We're gonna make this simple, efficient, professional, and done quickly. Look at the orientation. This is just how it's gonna sit. It doesn't matter how you position them. You can turn this way because this is the bottom. These are both. This is the new OEM piece, GM. These are the driver's sides. The numbers are different from the original part. The original part has that number. The new part has this number. This part, I believe, has been redesigned. As you guys can see, I can move this bushing fairly easy. Whereas this one is seized up. There's no movement here. I can't move it. Extremely stiff. Let's remove the hub, this rotor backing plate, and install it on here. As you guys can see, I got the studs directly facing the ground. You see the bottom, the tip of that stud allows for it to not mushroom, so you won't get a lug on it. They're designed like that, so we can set it just like so. And these are 18mm as well, just like the caliber bracket bolts. Just like these bolts are 18mm. And we're gonna zip this off. and zip it back on. Just as it sits. Just as it sits. Look at the orientation, guys. Let's do this. As you can see, we cleaned off with a wire brush. We got some air and blew it off. A couple things you can do here before we set the new knuckle onto this bearing. You can use some anti-seize if you want. Although these, I've never seen them seized up. They always come out like I removed them. But in the event they've been on here for many, many, many years and the car is older, it's a possibility that rust may form in here and they'll be seized onto this knuckle. You can use some anti-seize, but I'm not using it. I'm gonna use some of this. I need some more. I'm an advocate of this lithium grease. It's multi-purpose. You see I'm at the bottom of the pail. I've been using this stuff for years. Very good stuff. So we're gonna take a little paintbrush and just dab along the surface like so, go around it. I also use this on brakes, on the back of the brake pads as well, caliper flats, etc., some everything. So another thing you have to do, these bolts require some thread lock. You want to get some high strength, but you want to get removable thread lock. They require thread lock. It's very important. So let's set this down on here. We got our bolts. You guys can see. Let me show you guys that there's thread lock on here. That's why they were kind of tough to come out. I can leave the other stuff on here, but I'm gonna add some more. Yes. Okay, we'll torque them down in a minute, but we got them down. Torque spec for the hub bearing for this vehicle is 74 foot-pounds. So let's go knock this out. Okay, guys, I'm gonna zip through this now. Just pay attention to how I do it. You guys see how everything's removed. Do as I do, and you'll get it back perfectly installed. Let's tighten up these bolts now, the trailing arm bolts. Okay, let's raise it and install both of these bolts. This is the lateral link, adjust link. We'll torque them down last. We'll have room to torque. Okay, we're gonna torque down the hood bearing bolts first. They're 74 foot-pounds. If it wasn't so hot out here today, I'd have been done. My camera keep turning off from overheating. I gotta keep pausing. 18 millimeter. Okay, it's time for the caliper bracket bolts. 96 foot-pounds for the caliper bracket bolts. 96 foot-pounds. This is the smallest torque wrench that I can get up in here. So I gotta work with this, and some of the digits are fading, but you can clearly read it. So 96 foot-pounds for the caliper bracket bolts. Let's do those right now. Now that we're over here, let's put the wheel speed sensor back in. 10 millimeter for that bolt, if I didn't say it. Just want to snug it up there. All right, the final bolts, 118 foot-pounds, these larger bolts. No, this one's, they have this one at 66 foot-pounds, which is, they're the same size bolts as this one. This is 118 foot-pounds with a 90-degree final pass, but I'm not gonna do that because these are older bolts. Just gonna do 118 foot-pounds. For the trailing arm, 118 foot-pounds, 118 for both of those. And for the lower control arm, this is 118 foot-pounds as well. They have this one at 66 foot-pounds. I think that's an error. So this is a large bolt, and it was on here pretty tight. It was more than 66 foot-pounds. I'll tell you that. So I may go 80 with it. Be on the safe side. This is for the adjust link. This is called the adjust link. 13/16 for all of those bolts and nuts. And let's torque them down. Just so you guys can see. All right, let's do the other ones. All right, the trailing on the last two. However, due to how this is positioned, it'll be a little difficult to tighten that bottom up. I'll put a double wrench on the bottom one and tighten it. I've torqued so many bolts in my life, I know what it feels like. To avoid trying to do what I'm doing, you can tighten it before you raise the knuckle to this lateral link and to the adjust link. Before you put those bolts in, you can actually tighten those bolts down, because this does move laterally. You can tighten those bolts and torque them down to specs, because it won't interfere with the rest of the install, and it won't mess up anything, because like I said, this does move laterally on that joint. So you guys can get an idea what I'm talking about. You can actually tighten this before you put it back in place, because it's hard to get a socket on here. Even with a swivel, the socket won't go in there. So, just got the large box end wrench, put it to where I felt it needed to be. So that's it, guys. Let's install the wheel back. Everything's back perfect. And although we didn't remove the brakes from the caliper, push the caliper piston in, we're still just gonna pump them up just because we did take it off the rotor, just for safe measures. But other than that, everything's back perfect. Got the new knuckle in place, and we're all good. So I'm gonna do the other side really quick off camera. But let's put this tire on right now, and then I'll do the other one off camera, and then we'll take it for a test drive. All right, guys, I'm done both sides. It's just super hot today. That's the problem. Super hot. So I'll take this thing for a drive. Woo! It's baking in here. Oh my goodness. Started. Look at the mileage. You guys can get an idea. 88,000. Oh, let's crack these windows. The brakes are good. Just pumping them for safety, precautionary. Let this thing warm up some on cold start, and see what we got. All right, let's go for a ride. Let's get the garage down. We up a notch. Let's go. It's so hot up here. I'm hitting the brakes really hard because before, as soon as I drive off, I hit the brakes, I can actually hear it. Of course, not now. I don't hear anything. I can tell right away. That the noise is gone right away. I don't hear anything. I think she's gonna need some front brakes. I do hear them making noises. Don't hear anything no more, guys. Alright guys, I just made it back. Thing drives amazing. No more noise. I do want to mention the back shocks on this thing was making noise too. Replaced those. The video's on the channel. Very, very detailed video on the channel for both sides. And that did stop the noise. We get the other noise now. The other common problem is those knuckles. That bottom bushing is the culprit. So, hope you guys found this video helpful. Thanks for watching. Terrence, and I'm out.